Hi Emma, welcome to Resilience at Sea. I'm so excited to have you here. It means so much that you've made the time to join us today. Without further ado, how about you introduce yourself and let's take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Emma. I'm the co-founder and director of Seize the Mind. We are a training provider that brings mental health first aid to all seafarers, including the super yacht sector. And yeah, I'm an ex-seafarer myself. I've been on board boats for 15 plus years. We'll just say that to be kind. Started off as a stewardess and then made the transition to a chef. Have done the full spectrum of the yachting experience. So has started on motorboats, then found myself on sailboats for many, many happy years, back onto motorboats, have done private, have done charter. So yeah, I feel like I've ticked quite a lot of the yachting boxes, and it's really great to be here with you as well. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, before I go on to the questions, I just want to say what great work you're doing, and that as soon as we can make the mental health first aid courses a non-negotiable for all sailors, the better it will be. Because as you know, I've been a trauma nurse for 30 years, plus working on sailing boats. We've done a number of interviews and had so many conversations about these topics. And what I've realized, especially recently, is that nursing didn't prepare me for stress and post-traumatic stress, and yachting definitely didn't. And when we joined, it was all like because it was a really long time ago, kind of like a sailing version of surfing bums. No offense, but that's how I saw it. We joined because we wanted to sail the world and, you know, be kind of how a lot of people that make their life look on Instagram now, which isn't necessarily ideal. But we signed up for no pay. We signed up for a lot of fun and probably, you know, not understanding the risks. But in those days, there were accidents, there were deaths. The loads weren't so big. We were really remote, but we didn't have media, social media. I guess if there were accidents and tragedies in other parts of the world, we probably didn't hear about it at all or for a very long time.
Yeah.
But my main point and the reason we're here today is that I don't feel that yachting is preparing us for the stress.
Yeah. Totally agree, because there's so many different types of stress that we can experience on yachts, you know, yourself individually, what you're going through, being away from home, maybe for the first time, being away from friends and family. You know, as soon as we kind of take ourselves away from anyone that can see any changes in us, we've kind of lost that connection. We kind of don't realize that. Then you've got the pressure of doing a new job, working with new people, pressure of going to sea, going to do a crossing for the first time. Like there's no testing, there's no preparation really for that from a psychological point of view. Like, how are you going to be when you're completely in the middle of the ocean? Everyone assumes they'll be fine, and we all hope that we'll be fine. But yeah, again, it's just not much preparation is made for those kinds of things. And it's kind of wild to my head that we're still operating like that 15, 20 years later.
Absolutely. And you raise such an important topic because, okay, we go to sea and we're remote and no one knows how they're going to react in a remote situation. But secondly, what happens, and this is one of the problems with modern communications, is what happens when you get that message that your mum has breast cancer or your family dog, or worse still, family members died. Because we may live in close confines and it only take a week to feel like we're best friends with our crew. However, they don't know our parents' name. They don't know the town we're from. And they don't know our local GP. And so when there's an accident at home, I think that's one of the most, and that's the first trauma I experienced in yachting, was that no one knew who I was talking about, so no one could share that grief.
Yeah, yeah. And that's such a unifying thing. Like we have all of these rituals, we have funerals, we have wakes, because we need to say goodbye to people. We need to be around other people and say goodbye in those ways. I mean, it's so ancient and so part of the human experience. And when we remove ourselves from the situation, or we're in the vacuum of a super yacht, it's the middle of the summer, and inside we're kind of dying and wanting to be at home, and you know, feeling that guilt as well, as like guilt, shame, stress, sadness, all of those conflicting things going on. We also feel that we've still got to put on that yachting mask, like, oh, it's fine, it doesn't really mean much, to make sure that we're not overloading or kind of bringing our burden to someone else's kind of daily schedule. Or worse, we've got the owners on, and you just got to get down. You've just got to get down, do your duties. You know that people need fed, you know that beds need kind of turning down, you know that showers need cleaning, and you almost go into that kind of automatic mode where nothing is being processed, where no reflection is happening. It's just a solid block. And I think that really kind of just kicks the can down the road for a much bigger kind of maybe explosion or kind of break in a person. And we've seen all of those kinds of things happen as well. You know, we get to the end of the trip and everyone just decides to throw a huge amount of alcohol into the situation. And no judgment, I've definitely done that myself as well. But you kind of find yourself then having the conversations that you needed to have, but they're drunken, kind of slurring conversations in a bar about your feelings and all of that. And then you wake up the next morning, you can't remember what you said. There's a little bit of shame around that. So then the cycle just starts all over again. I don't think we ever get the break that we need or the help that we need in those situations, which just breaks my heart. And having gone through it, I don't think I was very kind to myself, but now stepping back, being out of the industry and seeing other people go through it, and I'm like, oh, I recognize that. I was definitely doing that myself, and it doesn't need to be that way. That's why I think we both have so much passion about what we do and getting that resilience and that expertise and experience on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate to say it, but sometimes I feel that yachting's actually quite backward in this respect. And I found even 20 years ago, when I was in the midst of my emergency nursing career, I guess, when there was a major incident, such as we had to do CPR, which even though we did it a lot, it was always still treated as a major event. And if you took time off work and kind of disappeared, for example, once we had a huge incident with a multi-trauma that actually happened at sea. Some 14-year-old kids, I think it's so long that I can actually share this story. Normally I share stories of people that have given me permission, but I'm going to share it anyway. A bunch of 14, 15-year-olds stole their parents' boat and went out at 2 a.m. drunk and ran into another vessel, and there were broken pelvises, there were broken backs and spines, and lots of head injuries. There were 12 kids severely injured in this, and 2 needed resuscitation. And after that, I decided, as we all do after a major incident, you know what? Nursing's not all it cracked up to be. Why don't I'm just going to go surfing for a bit and pack my car up and, you know, just get off the grid. And then maybe I'll just work in a cafe and a surf shop, you know, like I'll make the same amount of money. So I'll probably be a lot happier. And without any counseling, any help, I don't even think we really had mobile phones in those days. It was more email contact, and obviously I went camping, the home phone didn't ring. And they literally chased me down and said, you have to have counseling.
Oh, wow. Great.
And someone actually drove to the campsite. Like you know, we knew each other well enough to say, if you can't find Amanda at home, she's probably going to be there. And last sighted at, you know, Nalu in Western Australia, which is quite a drive from Perth. And there was that kind of support. Now, there's been many incidents in yachting where I know there has not been an adequate psychological team sent in after, you know, in terms of marine medicine, we have to deal with psychological injury and stress and trauma the same way we do any medical incident. That's our job as medical companies. And I don't think there's ever been that follow through. Would you agree that that's lacking?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's a combination of coming from kind of this hardcore like generation of we don't talk about things and we just get on with things, which is admirable in some ways. I think, you know, when we're talking about resilience and having that bounce back ability and the ability to kind of put your head down and get through a busy season or get through a busy kind of regatta week, that's the good kind of resilience. But then there's also the kind of the more toxic kind where it's like we don't talk about things, we don't make provisions for this. Even, you know, thinking about and talking about things in any facet of a yacht, when you talk to leaders, HODs, captains, everyone's like preventative is always better than cure. We'd rather stop an accident from happening. We'd rather identify all the safety problems. We'd rather people kind of have a safety meeting and identify if someone's done something silly, like put their, you know, their massive bag for home on top of an emergency exit, identify everything, and then come up on a round table discussion on the boat about what was done wrong, what could we do better, how can we communicate it. And I love that. I think that's brilliant. I love that we're always doing drills, we're always practicing and becoming quite dynamic in our drills. Like the chef is down, the engineer is down, what do they do, how do we fill that gap? I would just like that mindset, which we already have on boats and we know is invaluable, because we know when we go to sea, no hot firemen are coming rappelling down the side of a boat to put out the fire. We have to do that. So if we've already got that mindset, we've already got that attitude, we already know we're going to kind of raw, austere, wild places like the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, why can we not just expand that mindset and just also include psychological kind of first aid or mental health first aid? Start understanding what people are kind of maybe experiencing and how to deal with it, and talking about it before it becomes a problem. I mean, ultimately, we work in dangerous environments. We work on moving, sailing, floating, dangerous places. Our place of work is dangerous in itself. So we know that already. It's just about being proactive and expanding that mindset. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to open up that bubble that we've already got and apply it to mental health as well, which I think that would be a really great step forward. And it could be frictionless as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't need to be anything to talk about, you know, snowflakes or bringing egos into it. It's just a slight change in mindset about adopting existing practices and bringing them into day-to-day yachting life, which I think would be so transformative.
Absolutely. As you talk, you are showing that you've had a lot of experience in yachting and have clearly experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly. Reflecting on your career, could you describe a specific incident that challenged your resilience at sea?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. I always thought I was quite lucky. I've had lots of physical first aid things. We managed to save quite a lot of people, but yeah, I think one of the times I felt most unsafe is when I went on a crossing with a guy that had stepped up. The captain was away, and the chief officer stepped up, and there was so much going on that boat. Lots of kind of incidents of bullying, harassment, sexual harassment. There was also kind of drug use as well going on. And this was all happening while we were on land and shore. And when we went to sea and this person became the captain for the crossing, oof, I did not feel safe at all. And a lot of people didn't feel safe, but you kind of find yourself so many times in yachting where you're looking around. I was a stewardess at the time. I think I just stepped up to kind of doing a little bit of crew cooking. So I didn't feel I had enough worth, value, or status to say anything. So I kept looking around to see, is someone going to say something? Is someone going to step up? Is someone going to stop this? And it just never happened. And I've done about 10 Atlantic crossings, all of which I absolutely loved. I went with people I liked, people I respected, sailboats, you know, there is an argument to say they might be a little bit unsafer. Never had a problem with any of that because I always trusted and respected the people I was going to sea with. I knew who I was going to sea with, and I backed my life on those people. And when I suddenly realized that I felt I was disempowered, I felt incredibly vulnerable, and no one else above me was kind of speaking up, I think that was pretty terrifying. And I thought I kept it on the inside, but I don't think I could really. It just all kept blurting out in kind of misbehaviors and all of that kind of stuff. And through communicating with all the other crew, everyone had the same kind of sense. We all felt unsafe, but nobody wanted to say anything. So yeah, that was pretty terrifying. And I was really grateful when we got into Antigua and I could finally get off the boat, get away from that kind of toxic energy and just feel safe again. I think the feeling of safety should be a human right, but is denied so many people. And, you know, if you're not feeling safe, if you're not feeling psychologically or physically safe, that's a really shit. I mean, that's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't even have that base level, anything else above that is pretty unachievable, I think.
Absolutely. And so you said you couldn't wait till you got to Antigua, which was an island in the Caribbean, and that was the final destination. How did you cope with the aftermath of that incident?
Honestly, I don't think I did. I drank a lot. I drank as much as I could get down my gullet to try and just numb myself, to ignore the feelings, to delay and distract any kind of chaotic thoughts that were going on in my head. That only gets you so far. And then I did have a really good friend, an amazing friend, and she was really, really brilliant. And I think one of the amazing thing about Yossies is we are so brilliant at, you know, looking after, we're in the service industry. We're there to make people's holidays and trips like the best we can make them. We're not so good at looking after ourselves. So she had to step in and kind of hold me accountable for my behavior. And thankfully, she was a good enough friend to do that. I remember smoking a lot of cigarettes and drinking a lot of alcohol. And then I was kind of creeping towards like, I think I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be okay. We had a Christmas charter booked. I said I was okay to do it. I got 24 hours back on the boat and my body, the only thing I can say is my body and my brain failed. I had a massive breakdown. I lost control of myself completely whilst going into a charter. I then spoke to a friend who asked me clearly and directly, are you thinking about suicide? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm going to make this. And I can't remember what she said after that. I just remember she made me feel like I was going to be okay, that it didn't have to be like that. This wasn't a one-way road that I was kind of on rails heading towards. And they got me off the boat immediately. They got me back to England and I went into a really intensive course of therapy and just started to unpick everything, get some explanations for my difficulties, and most of all, get an outsider's point of view. So many times with my partner or my friends who have never been in yachting, you'll tell a story and it's kind of like, ha ha ha, you're waiting for the giggle at the end and everyone's like, is that legal? Are you okay? And you're like, oh, that's not normal. That's the normal reaction. And I've just been compressing it down with fun little anecdotes or like lots of alcohol and cigarettes. So I think sorry, that was a long answer. Short term, it was cigarettes and alcohol. Long term, it was friends that didn't take no for an answer and kept checking in with me and then held me accountable for my behavior. Just reflected my behavior back to me and said, this is not you, and then got me the help I needed. So yeah, it was a multiple efforts, lots of people involved.
Thank you so much for being so honest and sharing so vulnerably. Conversation is going to help so many people. On that note, how did that experience shape your approach to safety and well-being on board in future voyages and seasons?
I would say that I've been very lucky. I started kind of being very selective who I would go to sea with. I only go to sea again with people I would invite into my home. If I'm not going to have you in my home, I probably shouldn't be going to sea with you. So since then, all of the people that I've gone to sea with, I respect massively. I think that's been the biggest thing, is kind of having that boundary, which I didn't have in place. Also knowing what their safety records are like, their attitude going into the crossings themselves was so different. So from the offsets, I knew that it was a completely different scenario. I think as well, I have become way more outspoken. I'm not sure if that's after my breakdown or the incident or the fact that I'm over 40. And at 40, your last fuck just goes like into the ether somewhere. So I found myself going from being a crew member to somehow like becoming over 40 and then becoming more of a mother, I guess, more of like a kind of like a duty of care person where everyone could come. And when people had problems, when people were coming to me, I then became a mouthpiece. I would always obviously ask their permission, but I would speak to people on their behalf or start a conversation with everyone involved and be there to mediate if I was needed. So I think, yeah, definitely having boundaries and being more vocal about what's going on, holding people accountable, not just myself, but everyone around me. That's definitely been a massive change that I think that's probably made me a few enemies as well. A lot of people like the status quo. They don't like being challenged. They like getting away with bad behavior. So then having some mouthy crew chefs turn up and be like, that's actually not okay. And you need to think about how you communicate probably, yeah, has made me not very popular with a lot of people, but I get all of the emails, I get all of the conversations for the people who are feeling vulnerable. And the one thing I've always told myself is I would never, if I can stop anyone feeling as vulnerable as I did, I imagine every time I'm giving a course, every time I'm talking about mental health, I imagine myself with my back up against a crew door, feeling incredibly vulnerable, feeling alone. And I'm always addressing that person, that younger version of me. And now I've got a niece who's just gone into the industry. She's young, she's a dive deck. She's kind of making her way up through the industry, and I'm so proud of her. And now in my head, she is the person that I'm always kind of thinking about. I'm never going to allow her to be treated the way I was treated. So this is about prevention, about protecting her and empowering her as well.
That's so beautiful. So let's talk about her a little bit more. If you were to take her aside and give us some advice, what personal traits or strategies do you personally rely on and maintain to maintain resilience during challenging times at sea? What tools are in your toolbox?
So I guess I really am like, I'm super basic. I really do strip it back. I know that exercise is not only good for my body, it honestly makes me feel better throughout the day. So the days that I don't exercise in the morning, I'm just a little bit more sluggy. Everything's a little bit more of an uphill. Oh God, do I really have to chop all these onions and sweat them all off? It just, everything feels a bit more exhausting. When I've smashed out a run at the beginning of the day, everything just seems a bit more easy. So I can just achieve things. I'm like, I've already done this run. I already got up, bam, 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 tick, tick, tick. So I feel like that serotonin or that positive attitude that I've gained from exercise is not just a physical kind of advantage, but actually a mental one as well. So I try and do something for my physical health every single day, a run. I try and do something for my mental health every single day, whether that's breath work or just lying in bed, not scrolling on my phone, just allowing my brain to kind of daydream and kind of drift off and just be quiet. And then I try and do something for my social health. So I am a communicator. I know that. So I am the queen of voice notes. I have never met a voice note that I didn't love. And if I'm feeling down, I know that I'm guilty of shutting down and not communicating. That's when my friends know. That's a big kind of SOS sign when I'm not responding to messages, when I'm not engaging. So if I'm constantly kind of releasing the pressure, releasing the steam through voice notes, through communication, and also getting that kind of rebounding that problem and getting someone else who loves me more than I love myself in that moment's kind of perspective on it, and they take all of the energy and all of the emotion and all of the frustration of being kind of trapped on a boat away from it and just look at the situation and be like, that's not that bad, or A, B, and C, or I think you should deal with it this way. I think that has been transformative. So not keeping everything, thinking that I'm a hero and I can do it all by myself. And every single day, something for your physical health, something for your mental health, something for your social health. That's how I kind of cope every single day. I don't do it perfectly all the time. I am still human and I forget and I fuck up, but then I just get up the next day and start again. And that, I guess, is what resilience is all about, really, is falling back down and having that bounce back ability. Like a boomerang. You're Australian. It's not that you never get thrown away. It's that you get thrown, but you know how to pick yourself up, or you know where to turn or who to ask for help when you are in that situation.
Yeah, so good. Such good advice. So if you were to get on a new boat, or go back to one of the boats you've worked on in the past, which I know you often do, how would you foster resilience among your crew members in the face of adversity if there was to be a critical incident?
Um, I guess I would probably, it would be so multifaceted and it would be individual based. I think I would try and lead by example, by leading kind of healthy habits and all of that, and encouraging people to think about their healthy habits rather than just, you know, just without thinking, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Reflexively? There's a word I'm trying to get there. But just without thinking, just go towards alcohol, go towards anything that kind of numbs you out. I think in myself and how I can empower everyone is talking as well. I think there's a lot of shame when we don't talk about things. And when we don't talk about things, when we've got shame that's now introduced to a already kind of, you know, psychologically competitive environments, then that just throws petrol onto the fire. So I try and like make sure that there's no shame or stigma around talking about things. I highlight what the resources are, because yes, I know that yachting is way behind a lot of other industries, but it is making massive leaps and improvements. We've got brilliant people like Corrine Rayson. We've got amazing resources all around the world, different psychologists, most of whom I've used myself because they've been really helpful. So I think I signpost people. I just remind them that they're not alone, that they don't have to suffer it alone, whatever they're going through, and then just keep checking in with them as well. That consistency. I see people in the galley kind of like walking past my galley door. They do it once and then maybe they do it the second time, and I call it sharking. If they're sharking past my galley door, I know that they need to talk to me, and they maybe then too scared to talk to me. So then I'll always kind of start the conversation, be like, hey, Amanda, like, are you just chilling out there, or do you want to come chat to me in the galley? And then someone will come creeping in, and then I'll close the door and give them a safe space just to talk. And I often find that once you've just had that conversation, once they've got it out of their system, out of their brain where it's got a lot of energy, into the safe kind of, you know, safe, warm embrace of a chef or a mental health first aider or a lovely chief stew or an incredible captain, it de-escalates everything. And, you know, anything to do with first aid is all about reassuring and de-escalating the situation, not inflaming it. And sometimes it's as simple as having a conversation or letting people know they're safe to have a conversation with me. And if it's not me, then there's also professional resources that are trained, that are there. There's no shame and stigma about seeing people. I want people to think about going to a therapist the same way as you think about going to a physiotherapist. You're training for something big, like going into a yachting season, or you're training for a marathon. You get a little bit of niggle going in because your body's under stress or your mind's under stress. You see a physiotherapist, no shame. Now, why do we have that kind of that resilience, or that resistance to going to see a therapist? I dip in and out and see therapists whenever I need them, and they just give you all of the tools and toolkits and coping mechanisms. So when life does hand you whatever it hands you, you've got the capabilities, or you've got the understanding and the strength to be able to kind of overcome it on yourself. And if you don't, back to therapy, where you've got someone who will always listen to you in a non-judgmental space.
I love that. Oh, I've got so many questions there. But first of all, we talked about the sharking, and your one of as I do these interviews and as I, you know, tour around the world running my marine medicine courses, I notice these common themes about having an open door. How important in the sense of camaraderie and teamwork do you think it is in overcoming obstacles at sea?
I think it's essential. I think it's one of the highest attributes that you can have, and having an open door policy, having that confidence as a captain or HOD to have an open door is really, really brilliant. And I think teamwork, working with the teams I have, which have predominantly been amazing human beings, is why I've stayed in yachting for so long. I didn't always love the job. Who always loves the job? I mean, we're looking after oligarchs and, you know, billionaires and all of that kind of stuff. But working with the team I was doing it with, and kind of going through a season in the middle of Turkey with no aircon and 40 degrees with my best friend and chef, the friendship forged in fire is so unbreakable because of that. So that's really important. I also have always, except for a couple of captains, the majority of captains I've always worked with have been calm individuals. They have never been shouters. So watching how people respond when someone is snapping and shouting and unpredictable. Communication shuts down, problems kind of get put into boxes and then come popping out at like unexpected times. When you've got a captain who never shouts, who never raises their voice, who's always got an open door, everything's just a bit more frictionless. Everything seems to run on rails. Everyone knows what they're doing and how to do it. And if they don't feel shame or fear asking how to do it. And if they fuck up, as we all do, again, we're all human, you know, none of us are perfect. They're not worried. They're not in fear that they're going to lose their job or get shouted at or get embarrassed in front of everyone. I mean, I've had the full kind of spectrum of captains who have, some of the captains have literally gone on the Kerio, the online monitoring the websites, and named and shamed some of the sites that the boys were looking at, like porn sites, at lunch. And I just looked at this captain. I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Like, how do you ever think you're going to get respect or, you know, like leadership from that? So seeing the worst and then seeing the best has definitely kind of showed me that those calm, kind, open door captains are always the ones that have longevity in their crew. They have sustained kind of practices. They have less accidents. They have less crew changeovers than the other captains, which means you've got less training, less problems, less chance of something going wrong because they didn't know or they're new to the boat. So it's pretty obvious to my mind which is the team you want to be and what are the kind of qualities, human qualities I want to be around. And I've always tried to gravitate towards that, especially.
Amazing. You've got such a holistic and well-rounded understanding of the industry and what's required. So, you know, in terms of looking ahead, how would you envision the future in safety and resilience in the yachting industry to be in a perfect world?
Well, I'm stealing a line from someone else here. So I was on a panel with a gentleman from Dagama, and I'm very positive, as you know. I'm super optimistic. I'm like, woohoo, this is amazing. Like everyone just kind of jump into like mental health. This is how we're going to kind of get better in the industry. And he was much more of a realist. And he was like, nothing is going to change until there is a major incident. Until we have what was the submarine that went down? Is it Triton? Until we have a Triton, or until we have a cargo ship that doesn't have tugboats crashing into a bridge. Only when we have a massive incident are we going to have any kind of transformative change. And I didn't really want to believe him, but I think that might be where we're kind of going. I think I'm doing as much as I can. You're doing as much as you can. Short term, we're getting as many people trained. We're getting as skills out there. We're getting awareness out there. We're driving down stigma. But ultimately, it's only when we get mandated change, it's only when we get kind of policies in place and management companies and STCW revisions that are taking this seriously, that prioritize mental health, or at least make it equal to physical health, firefighting, sea survival, all of those other skills that we value so highly on board, that I think will get real systemic change. But I'm not going to give up. I'm still going to keep pushing, applying pressure, putting the training out there, shouting as loudly as I can, because like I said, there might be that one person that's sitting with their back against a crew cabin door that message just infiltrates them. And if I can save that person or help that person, then that's my job done. Then I'm happy. I know I've achieved what I wanted to, and that person has got a level of safety that they didn't have before because of me.
Yeah, it breaks my heart to look at it that way. It's something I've said myself many times as well, but how major does an incident have to be when we've lost people overboard? We've had people jump over the side or hang themselves, and sorry to anyone that this does bring up harsh memories or sound really tough, but we've had people decapitated. We've had so many major incidents, people hit by the huge loads, psychological illness that hasn't been addressed or supported. I don't know how much worse it can get before something changes, but you're right, maybe it's going to be something really big, which I hate to think, because as far as it goes, we've had pretty much some pretty big events every season, if not many.
Yeah,
you're right. Is there anything you'd like to add in terms of resilience and what you think would be, you know, give me three things. If you were to have a crew and you were briefing, you were about to sail across the Atlantic, you had a good, strong crew, there were a few greenies on board, and say a new captain, what would be the 3 top tips you would give in terms of resilience, being able to deal with stress and bounce back in the face of adversity? What would be Emma's guide to resilience at sea?
I mean, it would always be communicate. That's, you know, the first thing that I found really helpful. And I think one of the cruel things about our brain is that when we are in periods of stress, we tend to shut down, we tend to stop communicating. So really trying to like reverse that, encourage people to speak out more and be more vocal. And if they don't feel that they can do it on the boat, then at least have somewhere like a crew mess or a public place in a crew mess on the crew board for people that they can speak to, that it's not going to kind of affect their work, or no one's going to be informed about it. I think accountability as well, taking kind of responsibility for your own actions, it makes you feel more empowered, it makes you feel more confident. It can be really liberating, I think, as well, to kind of ultimately understand when invariably things will happen to you, that you are in control of how you respond to that. Are you responding or are you reacting? So that can be something that can be identified and can be fostered. Knowing that resilience is not something that people necessarily just have. It's something that can be trained. It's something that can be learned. It's part of a growing, learning, evolving, thriving process. It can feel a little bit uncomfortable, as any kind of growth period does, but knowing that there's not just someone on the crew that seems to have got all of the handbook to life, and you're the only one that feels like they're kind of trying to figure things out and just responding to like mines kind of that you're stepping on every single day. I also think just that attitude as well, not about having a kind of like toxic positive attitude, but just, I guess, maybe believing in yourself. And when you don't believe in yourself, having someone who loves you more than you love yourself, and having that person to turn to in moments of kind of indecision or crisis, or periods of high stress. So identify a support network, identify a few people that you can call, someone on the boat that you can always speak to, someone off the boat that's always got your back, and maybe someone in your friends or family that you can always kind of tap into. So you've got that kind of, that's holistic kind of care, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what time zone it is, what communication tools you have at your disposal, you know, whether you can just WhatsApp or whether you can actually get off the boat and have a phone call, is tap into your resources to communicate. Do not think that you're on your own ever. That's just not true. It's just your mendacious brain telling you that at the time.
Thank you so much. It's been such a valuable chat. So grateful to have you in my life and in the industry. And yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, Emma Ross.
Thank you.